Story 1. It doesn't actually work that way. We do import a lot of power from Canada when the market calls for it, but we also have generation capability here in New England, as well as tie lines to New York that we can either import or export power through. The likelihood of an entire regional blackout is extremely small even if they shut off all tie line flows coming from Canada, but I will say that power may become exponentially more expensive if that happens, which would eventually lead to higher rates. Utility companies in New England can't just raise prices on a whim. They have to make a rate case to the State Utility Commission and justify the reason for an increase, which happens on a set time period. So, the only immediate cost would be to the utility company itself, which would then try to recoup the cost from the ratepayers at a later date. Story 2. Most of the United States does not really want to watch the Chiefs play the Eagles. I would imagine they would all go outside and sing like the end of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Story 3. As a Canadian, I hate these questions. We should not be taking this kind of retaliatory action against United States citizens. Trump is an asshole. Cutting off power in winter is a terrible move. Story 4. Do people not realize that the United States also provides power to Quebec, as well as the United States providing a lot of oil to Canada as a whole? Story 5. I would not do anything, but I am not sure it would be helpful for Canada to punish a collection of states that did not vote for Trump over Trump's trade war. He would probably just laugh at the affected states and do nothing to help them while still ranting about Canadians being nasty or something similar. Story 6. I think the more pertinent issue would be a massive power failure in the middle of winter and the multiple deaths that would occur. But yeah, football. Story 7. I would be rather concerned because it is cold here right now, and if millions of people lost power, we could see cold-related deaths. The Super Bowl would be the least of my concerns. Story 8. I'd laugh, but the reality is it would hurt Canada in the long run. First, the negative public relations about Canada wanting to hurt the United States, not what Canada really wants to do. Second, it would be framed as a national security issue. Possible war, but that's unlikely. More likely, the United States would rush through additional coal or nuclear plants to prevent this. That's the most likely option. Story 9. This is a ridiculous way to phrase this question. Least of all, oh no, you can't watch your sports ball. This is unreasonable on several levels, including that you can't target a specific activity like that. Second, Quebec's electricity at most constitutes 10 to 16% of what New England uses, with the rest being produced locally. It would be a price spike, not a blackout. Third, you should know that a power reduction during the winter would affect people's ability to heat their homes, for example. This is obviously not going to affect wealthy people as severely. There would be little political benefit in it, too. New England is a region consisting of 6 states that all voted for the Democrats. Former President Trump did not care what happens to blue states, and the rest of his base actively wanted bad things to happen to them. It would persuade approximately nobody, except possibly for people who will remember the negative commentary directed at them. Story 10. A lot of people here are saying do it would be funny, I don't care, etc. But aren't thinking about the hospitals, critical infrastructure, elderly people with oxygen machines, and the vulnerable who could die in the cold. When the Texas grid failed due to winter storms, 246 people died for various reasons, but mostly hypothermia and carbon monoxide poisoning from running generators. Story 11. I would be scared for the diabetics in the rural areas who need to keep their insulin cold. I would be scared for the poor people whose groceries are going to go bad. I am scared for the mother who just pumped for her baby and the milk is going to go bad. I am scared for all of the innocent people who are going to be in serious trouble should it come to happen. Story 12. Honey, Quebec turned off the power grid and Grandpa's breathing machine went out and he died. Quiet down. I'm trying to watch the Super Bowl on my phone using my unlimited data plan and portable battery pack chargers. The speakers aren't very loud, so SHHH. Story 13. Are you talking about the electricity generated within America and shipped to Quebec, where the electric companies proposed a giant corridor through my state to make the connection? Our people voted against it, but it was overturned by our governor in a private session with the electric companies. Comes from New England to you. Go ahead. Story 14. Why New England? Proximity? We're the states that hate Trump. We are on your side. It's cold as hell and we have indoor pets. Target Oklahoma, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Wyoming, etc. Those are the Trump lovers. Story 15. I have a generator and I can afford the gas to run it pretty much constantly. I always find it surprising when people think we are all shocked by this. The man is a nutcase sociopath who has bankrupted everything he has ever touched, scammed people, committed crimes, has the backing of the richest man in the world who, coincidentally, has the mental capacity of a turnip, is appointing unqualified people to positions of power, and has nothing at all to lose by fully ruining everything and everyone. Who is surprised that it is going down this way? Story 16. I'm down for it. I'm in Michigan and Detroit Edison exports power to Canada, so I don't know if it would go well. I suspect Detroit Edison would be told to turn off the tap themselves, but I think it would be funny to listen to Trump have to renegotiate to get the power turned back on. Story 17. I would not like it, but that would force the government's hand. While it would mainly affect blue states, there are a lot of Republicans there, like in New York. Story 18. I would be livid because it would also shut down hospital equipment, oxygen tanks, heating for people in their homes, and risk lives. It's way bigger than a stupid football game. Story 19. I believe we need to address the challenges we are facing at the moment because that's what America needs. However, a measure that would only affect New England seems pointless, as it impacts primarily those who opposed current happenings. For instance, I live in a conservative state. Losing our electricity would be inconvenient for me, but at least the majority of the people here would experience the consequences of what they voted for. Story 20. To be honest, I wish that was the response chosen by the Canadian government rather than tariffs. Cut the electricity and gas. Sell potash to Europe, let them produce fertilizer and sell to the United States of America. Forget the orange idiot. Story 21. Please do it and more. The thought of good people doing nothing will result in a much worse future for America and the world. As an American, I'm extremely scared of what this Trump and Make America Great Again government is doing and will do. They won't stop. They won't listen to reason. It's time for the world to unite against this fascist overtake of the United States. The longer we and the world wait, the worse it will be. Personally, I will be affected greatly. The loss of work for my wife and myself will most likely affect every aspect of life. This is a price that must be paid, though. The cost of doing nothing isn't an option. I know I don't speak for everyone, but the harm Canada, Mexico, and the world as a whole impose on us is for our own good and will one day be celebrated. Story 22. I'm not in the New England area and I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl, so I wouldn't be affected. I imagine the United States would impose sanctions at minimum for loss of life due to car crashes, air traffic control being taken offline, and anyone who died in a hospital before their backup generators could activate. Story 23. I had an argument with my grandmother, she voted blue by the way, months ago about how Canada basically powers the Northeast, and she was fully convinced that the United States of America powers itself. So please do it. I can say I told you so. Story 24. While it would be an interesting statement to Trump and any of his voters in the area, do you really want to tempt him into declaring it an act of war? Story 25. It's simple, Trump would call it a terror attack and invade. Can't use Article 5 if it's North Atlantic Treaty Organization on North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Countries would be all, sheesh, that's too bad. But maybe if we stay quiet, Trump won't see us. Story 26. As an anti-Trump American, I say do your worst as soon as possible. Easing into the consequences of this administration will only turn the heat of the water up slowly and give people time to acclimate. We need to hit bottom as soon as possible so we can begin to fix things. Story 27. I mean, your problem isn't with New England, it's with the federal government. We might as well stick together. Sorry about our terrible president and his associates, you all. Story 28. Won't make a dent. I just looked at the data last night. Canadians think they are sending a large amount of electricity to the United States. It just isn't so, barely at 25% capacity. Even if they cut it off at full capacity, it is equal to a nuclear power station going offline. No big deal. Source: I was a senior power grid operator. Story 29. Do it. I dare you. A lot of Americans have no interest in watching sports. I live near Kansas City, and people are obsessively insane over the Super Bowl here. It is everywhere, invading everything. People need to get a grip. I would absolutely love to see people lose their composure because there is something wrong with it all. There are much more important things than this. I hope the Kansas City Chiefs lose just so this stops and things go back to saner times. Stop talking about Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift dating that other Chiefs player. Story 30. I would laugh my ass off. Then I would text my Make America Great Again relatives who I had previously gone no contact with and laugh at them. Then I would call in case they missed the text. Then, despite being an atheist, I would pray to my dead Trump-supporting dad who loved football more than he loved me, and remind him what an epic piece of shit he was. And then I would laugh. Story 31. I think this is really smart. It would be the only way to get through to the United States. I was thinking Mexico should do something similar for United States tourism. Make and implement a Trump tariff visa at the cost of $100 or $200. You would still have some of the same travelers willing to pay. However, it would definitely make a very large statement and be evident why it now exists. The visa cost would make up the cost of the implementation. There are many Texans and southern United States citizens who go to Cancun over their own beaches due to cost. The rise in the cost of goods in the United States is not going to disrupt the demographic who needs to be disrupted the most. Story 32. I don't care about the Super Bowl. Living in the area talked about, I care about not freezing to death in 10 to 20 degree Fahrenheit weather. I hate the cold already. It's miserably depressing staying inside all the time, and going outside is already unpleasant. Story 33. Yes, turn off power for millions in the middle of winter. What a smart idea so people cannot watch a 2-hour football game. How are adults this stupid? Story 34. I would think about the people on home medical devices, aquariums without filters and heaters, reptiles without heat lamps or mats. People already struggling to buy groceries, losing the food in their refrigerators. Death and devastation will come in the aftermath of this decision. Story 35. I'd be ambivalent. On the one hand, I think the type of people that care about the Super Bowl the most tend to lean Republican, though there are Democrats too, of course, and advertisers would lose a significant amount of money. But on the other hand, it's really cold up here, heating requires power, and all the states in New England are blue and voted for Harris. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, purple states that voted for Trump in 2024, aren't in New England, nor are any red states or any of the other purple states. Pennsylvania is one of the mid-Atlantic states. Michigan and Wisconsin are part of the Midwest. It's possible this would get chief executive officers and such to put pressure on Trump to back down, but it's equally possible that this will mostly just upset and possibly harm people who didn't vote for Trump and have no long-term consequences. Story 36. I would not care. Although I am not in the area and I do not watch football, so as long as the power comes back at night so people do not freeze, why not? Story 37. This would also hit exactly the right demographic. I'm not saying all viewers think that way by a long shot, but I assume a majority of that group will be tuned in or planning to. Story 38. Laugh. If my fellow citizens cared as much about the rule of law as they do about adherence to the rules of the National Football League, we probably would not be in the midst of this Make America Great Again show. Story 39. I know many who receive steep discounts on Canadian hydroelectric power. The devastating effects would reach far beyond the Super Bowl, unfortunately. Northern New York, for example, is home to the lowest income population in New York State and much of the northeastern United States. The standard of living is quite low, and hundreds of thousands are already struggling to get by day to day. Unfortunately, this population will be affected disproportionately, and many will not have the means to make do. It is unfortunate that we've come to tariffs and trade wars with our closest allies, all over nothing. The real damage comes in the form of increased prices of lumber, steel, cement, oil, electricity, and vehicles, to name goods affected only by the Canadian tariffs. These will impact the average American in a very tangible way, with many of these goods already sitting at record high prices. Low-income Americans are going to be hit hard. All of this is excluding the impact of the Mexico tariffs, which will affect produce and meat prices severely. Story 40. The Super Bowl is the least of our problems. I would not want hospitals to suffer, but otherwise, I am all for it. Losing money is the only way to get through to greedy lunatics. Story 41. That would be an act of terror, in my opinion. I don't think Canada has the resolve or is reckless enough to do such a thing. Trump is insane. He would definitely overreact. Story 42. I live in New England. I have plenty of material on my phone I can watch, batteries to power my home appliances, and plenty of canned food. I think I'm one of the few in the modern age to keep a store of food. Turn it off. I'll be fine. I know it sounds awful, but when it's the most awful amongst us, Canada needs to hurt the right people. Story 43. Holy, I completely forgot there's a Super Bowl coming up. All the political nonsense keeps sucking the air out of the room. Thanks for reminding me. I'm on the West Coast, so your question doesn't actually prompt me to answer. Just grateful to be reminded something else is happening.